How was DragonCon, Val? It was amazing. At Surreal, I was reminded that I am an author and I'm an author part of an amazing community. First off, thanks to Cisca, the Fantasy Lit track, the Alt History track. Oh my gosh. The gathering was amazing. 70 of us authors signing books, and the folks at DragonCon and attendees coming and stopping by the talk. John Jackson Miller and Megan Mackie came by, so that was a lot of fun. So thanks, guys, for swinging by. It was great catching up. Last time I saw John was at Indiana Comic-Con when we were at an event a couple years ago, so it was pretty cool to be like, I was remembered. But congrats to him and his new Batman book, so be sure to check it out. He's a great author, and he's written for Star Wars. He's done the Sith trilogy and Kenobi. He's done so much. And then my first panel was Snow White. That was a blast. Of course, the first question out the gate was, what was your first Snow White story? And I looked at the audience and I was like, I think most of us can agree. It was the Disney movie, and everyone's nodding. And I said, which was our intro to reverse harems, and everyone lost it. And then I expressed that my first written one, of course, was what I went to chase after this, right? What is the real Snow White story, original Snow White story? So it was Red Rose and Snow White, a grim fairy tale. I said, and that's when I realized that I like bear shifter romances. And again, I think the panelists lost it at that point because they were very familiar with it. But great panel. Our entire lineup, I covered all sorts of variants of Snow White worldwide, and it was just so fun exploring the different ways that Snow White was poisoned and cursed and things like that, and how drastically different where the dwarves started to come in and things like that. So it was a great time. And of course, I love making our audience laugh. And I did more so during Bodice Ripping After Dark. I had gone to a couple of panels to support the Eerie Travels crew, and magically wound up eating lunch with them and Jonathan Maberry. So that was a good time. And we got to talk about writing and life and all sorts of stuff. So I had interviewed Jonathan Maberry a couple of times on Drinking with Author, and got very drunk. So that was hilarious. But it was a great time. And I'm reminded and humbled. And in fact, I got inked, signed by him. And that's one of my favorite books he's written. And apparently it's his favorite standalone that he's written. But if you are into tattoos and horror reads, that is a good time. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about the story. And I'm not going to spoil it. You just gotta read it. So Jonathan Maberry's inked, got it signed by him after we had lunch together. So that was pretty cool. And then I had Bodice Ripping After Dark. So this was my 10 p.m. panel. If you're not familiar with DragonCon, 10 p.m. panels, it's where it's adult time, and sort of all our stipulations and censorship is out the window now. So we absolutely had a blast on this. What I didn't expect is me and the smut reader reviewer, Corey Applegate, were pretty much the experts on kinks, fetishes, the community, and lifestyle. Even though I don't participate in those things, but I've taken tons of workshops. I know people in those communities and live those lifestyles. So whenever I include kinks and fetishes, especially in the honeycombing stuff, even the kinks and fetishes that I wouldn't take interest in, I like to explore them on the page, introduce my audience to it, because that's where erotica is its positive point, right? We get to safely dip our toes in different kinks, fetishes, and lifestyles and see if it's something we're interested in, right? So there was a great conversation about that stuff. And then, of course, our other panelists covered the other side of the spectrum where it's sweet and vanilla, and it's okay to not have these things as part of your readership and your reading and your lifestyle scenario. So it was well balanced. I think the audience got a great snapshot of both realms and how to navigate this crazy or intimidating realm more safely, and know that the community, there's a community, just like there's a community authors and community reader kind of scenario. So it was really cool because usually I'm like the person who's learning a thing or two when it comes to these topics. So it was a very different role for me for the first time, I think, realizing that I have done enough workshops and enough investigating and interactions to actually feel confident and waylaying. Here's how you safely navigate these things. These are the proper terms and respectful ways of describing it and how to portray it, and no judgment here. And they're like, well, what's a underrepresented kink in erotica? And I said, we see it in rom-coms all the time. I said, but I don't think anyone really portrays humiliation kink. They always want it to be the belittling thing, but there's more to it than that. So that was an interesting can of worms that I opened, but it was fun. The next day, I ended up going to the official Eerie Travels presents. Mark, Munzie, and Erica Lance did a great job. The woman behind me cracked open her can of whatever at the start, and then by the end of it, I heard her go, "Oh, I opened my drink already." She says, "I didn't even take a sip that whole time." So yes, you kept the audience captured for sure. So that was great, seeing how well received they were, how many people rushed the stage afterwards. That was wild. So that was pretty cool. I had a great time in a historical romance panel with Jean Marie and Nancy Northcott, and Kate was the moderator. And we got to really peel back what historical romance does, what ground it has covered for longer than anyone else, and more endearingly so. And then let's see what else. There was just so much. I had so much fun. I hung out with everyone at the Westin. That was either Saturday or Sunday night. And hung out with Megan Mackie. I ran into Keith DeCandido. I ran into some of my fellow panelists. Got to talk with everyone on a more personal level, see people that I haven't seen and had been on panels in the past with. So it was a good time. Probably one of my best DragonCons I've had in a long time, or ever. I think it's my best DragonCon. If I put them all in order, this one would definitely take the cake. Got some amazing artwork. Got to pick up some cool pieces from Annie Stegg. I ran into Stanley. Can't think of his last name now, but he does dragons and cups and stuff. But he does this wonderful dragon in a green teacup, a coffee, and a hot chocolate. So I got the coffee and hot choco ones to go with my green tea one. So I was pretty happy about that. They're already on the wall. Let's see what other pieces and then Von Art stuff. So I got to pick up some nice gold leafed pieces, 5x7s from them. And it was absolutely, of course, a lot of the stuff I picked up has frogs in it because we're a frog family. That's just the way we are. But no, had a great time. It was, I think they reported it brought in $80 million in revenue for the city of Atlanta. So if that doesn't say volumes for what that convention does, and it takes like 4 or 5 hotels in downtown Atlanta, it's an amazing experience. Highly recommend. It is such a blast. But thanks for having me. And I hope to see you guys next year and be part of it and continue to make people laugh on panels.